Hello, Nathan Pierce here with Family Protection Ministries. Today we're going to talk a little bit about school choice, what that means and what it doesn't mean, and try to bring a little bit of clarity to the discussion of School Choice Week. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Front Line with FPM, where we talk about California politics, homeschool freedom, parental rights, and the family. I'm your host, Nathan Pierce, and thanks for joining us today. Let's jump right in and see what's going on here on the Front Line. Before we get started, I want to go into a little bit of a discussion about the family and what role the family plays in society. Ephesians 6:1, 1 through 4, tells us, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise." Verse 3, "that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land." Verse 4, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." Now, God created the family as the first institution, giving parents, not the state, the responsibility of raising and disciplining children. Now, God created the family as the first institution, giving parents, not the state, the responsibility of raising and discipling children. This divine design stands at the heart of our mission at Family Protection Ministries. From the very beginning, God established the family as the foundational institution of society. In Genesis, we see that God created mankind in his image, male and female, and gave them the charge to be fruitful, to multiply, to fill the earth. This is in Genesis 1:27 and 28. This was not merely a biological command, but a spiritual and cultural one. The family was, and still is, God's primary means of transmitting truth, values, and identity from one generation to the next. Parents are uniquely called to train up children in the fear and admonition of the Lord, Ephesians 6:4. Serving as stewards of these young lives entrusted to them by their Creator, Psalm 127, 3-5. As believers who engage in advocacy, we must recognize the deep theological significance of the family. It is not arbitrary or outdated social unit, but a sacred design that reflects God's wisdom and goodness and character. When we defend parental rights, speak against government intrusion into the family or education, or we stand for marriage as God defines it, we are not merely promoting tradition. We're honoring God's blueprint. Every effort to uphold the biblical family is ultimately an act of worship and faithfulness to God's unity, God's authority, God's faithfulness, steadfastness, and unchangingness, because He is the same as He always was and always will be. And today, the biblical family is under tremendous pressure from cultural redefinition and legal encroachment. And this calls us to not to panic, but to stand with conviction. It requires courage to affirm what Scripture teaches and compassion to live that truth with grace. As we advocate for policies that support and protect families, we do so in confidence that we are echoing God's heart and aligning with His created order. So it's important to recognize that the work that we are doing is God's work, but it's something that the world sees as opposed to their view of man, the man-centered world. And so we can expect to be attacked. We can expect that we are going to be at odds with the world because our view of the world is God-centered. We recognize that God created the world and everything in it, and that we are to worship Him. And yet the world's view is that man created God in his mind, in His image, after His likeness, and that man is at the center of that universe, and God is just a figment of man's imagination. Of course, we are going to be at odds with that worldview. So as we continue to review legislation, as we continue to recognize where all of these different ideas are coming from, we have to acknowledge that there is a fundamental difference in worldview between where we're coming from and where many other legislators and policy makers are coming from. So we can know that there's an opposition here, and yet we can also know that God is with us. He's with us till the end. And we also know that God wins in the end. He is faithful. He will be with us. So let's have a little discussion about school choice. Each year, about this time, National School Choice Week celebrates the growing number of educational opportunities available to families. Homeschooling, private schools, learning cooperatives, charters, hybrids, and everything in between. And at one level, that's something worth affirming. Because behind the idea of school choice is a foundational truth we should never stop defending. Parents, not the state, bear the primary responsibility to educate their children. That's something we can get behind. Let's say that again. Parents, not the state, have the fundamental responsibility to educate their children. That truth matters, but it also demands clarity. Because not everything labeled choice actually protects freedom, and not every offer to help comes without a cost. Today I want to talk about where the school choice conversation often goes wrong, and why discernment matters more than celebration. Parents have both a natural right and a moral obligation to direct the education of their children. Families differ in how they fulfill that responsibility. Some homeschool, some use private schools, some rely on co-ops, tutors, or shared community models. Educational diversity is not a threat, it's a strength. Uniformity has never served children well. True educational freedom means parents are free to choose the path that aligns with their convictions, their circumstances, and their calling, without coercion and without surrendering authority. But here's the crucial distinction we often miss. Parental choice does not require government funding. Let me say that again. Parental choice does not require government funding. And in fact, when funding comes from the state, freedom is almost always the first casualty. We live in a time when families are under real pressure. Inflation is up, costs are rising, homeschooling and private education requires sacrifice. So when government shows up and says we're here to help, it can feel compassionate, even providential. But the government never just gives. It always governs. What's being offered is not a gift, it's a contract. Government cannot give money taken through compulsory taxation without asserting jurisdiction. To accept the benefit is to enter a relationship where the state sets the terms, defines compliance, and enforces rules. That's not generosity, that's governance. Scripture gives us a clear framework for civil authority. Romans 13 teaches that government exists to restrain evil and uphold justice. To protect life, liberty, and property is the very premise that our country was based on. These principles are what we think of as freedom. Nowhere does Scripture assign the education of children to the state. That responsibility belongs squarely within the family. Education predates modern government. When the state assumes the role of provider or financier of education, it inevitably claims authority it was never given. Government-funded choice programs often begin with friendly language and minimal oversight, but funding always carries strings. Curriculum approvals, testing mandates, spending audits, data tracking, restrictions on worldview, and discipleship. Freedom is rarely lost all at once. It is lost through dependence. By contrast, educational freedom flourishes where responsibility remains with parents and where help is voluntary, not coerced. National School Choice Week can be a moment worth celebrating, but only if we celebrate the right thing. Parents should be free to choose how they educate their children, grounded in responsibility, not entitlement. This isn't fear, It's discernment. Discernment is very important. Hi, folks. I just wanted to point out something that as the state of California and legislators, as well as the governor's office, are working really hard on issues related to the economy, issues related to the funding struggles of the California state government, that we are not asking the government for money. And that puts us in a really positive position of being able to be sort of a bright light in their day when it comes to visiting their offices. We're coming in just happy with the way things are in terms of our freedom for homeschooling, and we don't have to worry about asking and trying to beg them to give us funding, which is what many other groups are having to do right now for their programs. We don't need that, and frankly, we don't really want to be in that position, because then we would be, targeted for the regulations, the restrictions that are going out to many other organizations and institutions that are reliant on government funds right now. Right now is a bad time to really be taking government funds for your program, because those programs are all under tighter scrutiny right now. So it's something that we can all be grateful for, but also you can be sort of encouraged that when you go and do visit legislators' offices, whether here at the Capitol or at the district level, that you can be sure that that's something that's working in your favor. You're not asking for extra funds, and they will be grateful for that. Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Front Line with FPM. For more information about the topics we discuss here, check out Family Protection Ministries at fpmca.org and subscribe to our channel.